Welcome, UCF fans, to another edition of the Daily Night. And today we're going to discuss UCF football recruiting as it relates to the 2022 and 2023 recruiting classes. There are a couple things to think about here. And number one, this is a process that changes by the day. That's the nature of recruiting in general. You can only look at recruiting one way, and that's just we're trying to get better. Sometimes that means not taking players. Sometimes it means go ahead and take that player. With that being stated, full disclosure on the unique situation right now. The NCAA allowed teams last year to look at recruiting much differently due to COVID-19. This season, they said you can have an unlimited number of players. Teams oftentimes loaded up in the last recruiting class. However, the NCAA also announced that you had to be back down to 85 scholarships for the 2022 season. What does this mean for UCF or any other team for that matter? Well, it means one thing. You got to be really, really efficient with your 2022 recruiting class because you have to break it down further than you normally would in terms of numbers per position. And overall, UCF might only take 15 kids in the high school class. It's not out of the question. Depends on the specific player in question, yes. And I'll break that down just a little bit further here in just a moment. But overall, UCF's high school class, very specific here, high school prospects will probably be less than a normal class and maybe significantly so. There could also be some transfers, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute. But first and foremost, know that this is not going to be a normal class, and it will impact the class of 2023 subsequently. I don't think there's any way around that. The subsequent result of that will be maybe a 23-man class next year. Again, with the moving parts in the transfer portal, it's hard to project. It's week to week. I'm not sure just where UCF will be, and probably the UCF coaches aren't as well. I just know that there will be a constant revolving door as long as the transfer portal includes not sitting out a year. That I can guarantee you, UCF or otherwise. The subsequent problem for UCF, however, is just finding the right fits at any position, and that's no different than any other year. So with that, I'm going to just kind of go through the kids that are committed, talk a little bit about position situations, what they need for the rest of this class, and how it impacts the class of 2023. Let's talk about the best players in the class in terms of what they need. This doesn't mean your recruiting ranking. This doesn't mean your ability to play any type of situation or whatever. It's just skill set at position. There are certain spots in football that have a higher value because they're just so darn hard to get. Supply and demand. Starting off for me is Nakai Martinez and Keanis Thompson, corner and D end. Those are the two spots that teams really look for, and it's why they're also rated so highly in some regards. Both of them present an opportunity to fill a need. Talent is one thing. They both are very talented. They had offers from SEC schools, Alabama, and stuff like that for Keanis, etc. But they have the ability to play for UCF early at positions of need. You can never have enough pass rushers. You can never have enough corners. UCF is in a situation right now where they could probably use the services of both players. There's just not enough depth. With Thornton's injury at corner, just as an example, I have no idea how long, if at all, he will miss time moving forward. You can always use another corner. It's an extremely difficult skill. Running backwards is not natural, but that's what corners have to do. With that being stated, I expect him, meaning Nakai Martinez, to play pretty early his freshman year when he does come in. He's a very intelligent young man, and he's played at a Popka program on the north side of Orlando that, quite frankly, is used to a lot of success. He won't be intimidated by playing college football at all. And the exact same thing with Keanis Thompson. He plays at Lakeland. It's a program that's used to success. He's been a part of a state championship team. He knows what it's like to be in big moments. While it's a step up for college for each of them, both of them are probably going to play pretty early. Jamal Johnson's another defensive end, the same thing. I would not be surprised at all if he played next year. He plays at Chaminade Madonna down in the greater Fort Lauderdale area. I'm not going to be surprised if and when he plays next year. Strong kid, very mentally tough. He's used to competition. Why not? Again, plays defensive end, very important position for the Knights. And it's also a position that UCF will probably need some extra help next year. Big Cat's going to be gone, etc. So just fill and replace. That's what this is. That's why you recruit. Moving on, looking at this group overall, I don't think there's any other one player that I would say he's definitely going to play early. You just have to wait till the kids get on campus. There's certainly opportunity, but I'm just going to go through them just based on like position and just overall concept. Quarterback, Thomas Castellanos. I'm going to go actually see him play next month in October. This is a young man that can really run the football, but he's also a better passer than most people realize. Not the biggest guy in the world, 5'11", 200 pounds, but he's really strong and he's a stout frame. He is the epitome of a dual threat quarterback. That's important because for Gus Malzahn to truly get his system going, he needs an influx of players that can run and pass. Castellanos will make you miss in space. He's a young man that has the ability to throw it over the top, and his elusiveness in the pocket is really rare, even for a mobile kid. His ability to not just make a guy miss in the pocket, really, but to fend them off physically. His strength for his size is unique. It could be a 280-pound defensive tackle, and this young man will still find a way to use one arm to just push away. He's right-handed. Use his left hand to push away and then step back and make a pass. Even if it's incomplete, it's better than a sack. He will make plays that other guys simply cannot. So he fits Gus Malzahn's system quite well. UCF to date does not have a running back commitment. There are some possibilities, and they're still chasing at least one, if not two running backs for this class. Just depends, again, on who might be willing to come. But at receiver, they have a unique situation. They've got a nice combo with Quan Lee from in-state. He's from Gainesville. He's a slot guy who could play outside as well. And then they also have one of the more unique players from the state of Georgia in Tyler Griffin. He's a basketball player that has transitioned into a full-time role with football. He has elite athleticism, especially when it relates to jumping. If it's a high point situation, not many times will he lose that battle. 6'4", give or take 200 pounds. And again, very, very natural athlete. They use him at running back some, even though he's that tall and long and lean. That's what his high school does. And I actually love it. It's Southeast Bullock High School in Brooklet, Georgia. It's just a great situation to watch him as an athlete forget the position. When he gets the football, he can make guys miss, even though he's that tall. It's really cool to watch. Moving over to the tight end position, this is something that I'm going to be curious. Gus Malzahn has used tight ends for a long time. H-backs, fullbacks, moving guys around, shifts, motions, all in an attempt to get an advantage schematically to one side of the formation or another. Then, of course, the guy can catch the ball and he can block. Grant Stevens is going to be coming to UCF. He's from the Jacksonville area, and he has good hands, and he's more of a receiving tight end. I think he fits in perfectly as an H-back for the Knights. He can be a guy that can kick out block when you run traps, when you pull, all those basic concepts that you think of old school football. He can be used. He can be used, but he can also act like he's going to block and just go out in the flat and catch a simple dump-off pass, make a linebacker miss, and get a 20-yard gain out of very little effort. He fits UCF extremely well. I like him a lot. Moving over to the offensive line, there are different levels in terms of what you're looking for in a football player, meaning versatility, meaning speed, meaning strength, etc. Well, versatility as a group is really what this team has with its offensive line commitment situation. Caden Kittler is one of the more underrated players in the state of Texas. He is the lone commitment from the Lone Star State for the Knights. He plays in the Dallas area, and he's a kid that probably will end up playing center, but he could be a guard or even a tackle. Great feet. Great feet. Like his upside a lot. I don't know why he's not rated higher, but hey, I'm just one person. I've watched quite a bit of his film. He is a very, very fun player to evaluate because you can speculate about different opportunities and how UCF could use him. Now, Miguel Maldonado is a really unique kid because he's like some other kids that just seem to be happening all the time, came up as a basketball player, but he's 320 plus pounds. Very good feet, very strong, has the ability to reshape his body and be even more lean and muscular than he is. I expect him to be a right tackle or a left tackle at UCF. Doesn't make any difference. He could play guard if you needed him to, especially earlier in his career. Bottom line, he is a power player. He has the ability to knock you back. And anytime you can get somebody with those kinds of physical attributes and you add in his foot quickness based on playing basketball, you got to play defense. Nothing will be more exposed than a person's defense ability than in the game of basketball. If you can't move your feet, you will be exposed quickly. Maldonado could play. Now he's taking those skills and putting on some cleats and a helmet, and he's going to play for the Knights. I expect him to play at some point by his sophomore year. He's just so physically gifted. He just has to understand the process, go through it, be responsible. There's no reason he can't play considerable minutes early in his career. Peyton Nelson is more physically just natural in terms of his frame and just lean, but still needs to fill out more, unlike Maldonado. Where he's more advanced is technically. His kick step is tremendous. He has an ability to play left tackle early, if not even as a freshman. They might insert him there and see how much he can compete for playing time. He may not start or play much, but I expect him to start at left tackle in terms of at some point in his career. And I also expect him to be placed at that position early in his career. He's going to play right or left tackle. It doesn't matter, but he has the ability to be the blind side for a quarterback that's right-handed. And that's the rare skill that you look for. Can't have enough of those guys, kind of like corner. They're very important. Nelson needs to add weight. Like I said, he's not as big as Maldonado, 285, 290 range, but he doesn't need to add much. Another 10 pounds or so is fine. He's in good shape. He's a young man that takes it very seriously as it relates to weightlifting and conditioning. He runs very well in the open field. He might be the best offensive tackle I've seen in this class as it relates to getting out wide and preventing the opponent from having one guy breaking up a big screen pass. He gets to the DB, the corner, the safety quicker than about anybody I've seen. And he also comes out there and does it with good base, good balance. And he's not a guy that's just going to be running around waving, looking to hit anything he can without technique. He's a smart player. Now, moving over to defense and kind of finalizing here, I already talked about the defensive line a little bit. This is unique in terms of what UCF is trying to do in the front seven. They want to be faster than the opponent. I've seen both of these young men play. I live fairly close to both of them, so I've been fortunate enough to do it. I don't really know which specific position or positions they will play, but I have ideas. This is just my own projection, and I'm not saying it's a done deal. There could be changes based on injury, changes on graduation, and they could change positions at any point because they're versatile, and that's a good thing. Versatility matters in a defense because each week you could be playing a totally different style offense. You go from a traditional pro style. You could see a team like Navy, UCF has coming up this next game, that runs option. You're going to place guys at different spots. The following two players can do that. TJ Bullard, he plays at Berkeley Prep in Tampa. Know him and his family. They're great people. He can really run. He's only about 185 pounds right now. I expect him to eventually play the Knight position, and that's the hybrid linebacker. But depending on how much he grows, he could be a guy that ends up at will linebacker. That's the weak side. I don't know. It just depends on TJ and circumstance. What I do know, he finds the football. TJ Bullard finds the football, and it finds him. He's around the ball. When it's deflected, he's around the ball. When it's a gang tackling situation, he's around the ball. When it's a solo tackle, he is very instinctive. Very underrated. This young man has the quickness and the speed to be effective and kind of just be a strong safety playing linebacker, if you will. That's today's college football. He fits that against spread offenses. That's what you're going to be facing, so you might as well have a guy out there that's ready to rock and roll. TJ will be able to do that very early in his career. I'll be shocked if he's not on the kickoff team from day one pretty much. He is fast. Also, very much like him, Cam Moore plays at Seminole High School. They won the state championship last year. He's a very talented player. Could play much like Bullard, the will, and he could also be a Mike. He's a little bigger. He's about 205 right now. I expect him to be 215 to 220 when he's done filling out. But he's a guy, again, that can run. The thing about him that's unique compared to most high school linebackers, because I went to one of their practices and I was quizzing him some, he not only knows where he needs to be, Cam Moore knows where the other guys need to be. That's a signal that middle linebacker is in his future in some capacity. Could be just third down situations, goal line. Maybe he does the best against a spread. Whatever it may be, he can be that guy in some sense. Now, UCF's defense is very unique, and it's actually quite a bit like Seminoles, where he'll play to the strengths of the formation. He'll move around a little bit based on what he does for Seminole, and UCF does some of that too, but I'm not going to go into all the schematics. Bottom line, he is versatile enough to play either inside linebacker position, and he can help other players move around and do things to make them better. This is a team sport after all. Football is the ultimate team sport. If you don't understand where the other guys are and you're the middle linebacker, there's probably going to be confusion and there's probably going to be chunk yardage plays against you. Cam Moore can help prevent that. The only thing to really say in regards to him otherwise, I'm curious to see how big he wants to get and how big UCF wants him to be. I'm not really sure, and I'm not sure what he's comfortable with doing. I haven't asked him that, but that's just something to think about moving forward. Now, looking at this class overall, you kind of look at it and you say, well, what are they missing? What do they need to do? It's just about talent, really. With limited scholarships, I think it's going to be less about position and more about just high-end guys. You can always look for more corners and D-line. That's the automatic. I don't care what a college coach tells me. If a big-time player at corner or D-line calls, you're going to talk to him. Can't state it enough. You could never have enough of them. Offenses have the advantage. They know where the ball's going. The defense chases. You use more energy. And those positions, there just aren't as many of them anyway. And you need to rotate more on defense. Exponentially more important to recruit a corner, for instance, than, say, an extra tight end or extra offensive guard. It's just the way it is. You need those guys because they rotate. Now, I'm going to guess 15 to 18 kids, just like I've said from the outset, with room for UCF to add players potentially through the transfer portal. How many, I don't know. It depends on how many kids leave UCF. It also depends on how many players will be looking to take visits. They probably have an idea on a few kids. Hey, they're going to take an official visit for this weekend, this season, or after the season. I'm not sure. When Gus Malzahn was at Auburn, he used to have a banquet right after the season. It had a lot of recruits in. Most schools do this. But if you have a hard number like 6, 10, whatever it may be, that you know players are coming in, it gives you a better idea what's coming up. I'm not sure what UCF has, but I do know one thing. And UCF is not done with the high school class. They're just going to be picky. Again, it just depends on the player. If you're looking for corners, I know there's a young man from Alabama. There are a couple other kids, etc., around Florida they're looking at. And there's probably going to be a junior college player too. I know they're looking at the junior college ranks at a couple of different guys for the offensive line. But I'm told already that they're probably, barring just a really great player, they're probably done with high school players along the offensive line. And you could probably use that example across the board. They're not going to take another quarterback. They're not going to take another player at defensive end unless he's just a total stud. There's just no reason. Like if Gabe Dendy shocked everybody and decided he wanted to come to UCF, sure, you're going to take him. Gabe Dendy is one of the best players in the country. He's Keanis Thompson's friend and teammate at Lakeland. But at the same time, you cannot look at this and say, hey, we're definitely going to take this number of players at a spot. Because of breaking it back down to 85 scholarships, and that's why I led into this episode with it, UCF has to be picky. And I know a lot of class of 2020 kids, 22 kids are, well, disappointed in this, but it's just numbers and math. Schools have fewer numbers this year. So the final point that I'm going to bring up is 2023. UCF is on the road this week with a lot of their coaches checking out prospects. The class of 23 players around Florida, Alabama, Georgia, etc., are going to be scouted by UCF. And it's just an opportunity to get out there, get your business card on a high school coach's desk, place eyes on them, check transcripts, etc. UCF is very active with the underclassmen. I've done this for some time, but I had it confirmed to me in the last week and a couple of times actually. And it's important because the next class could be big. It could be 20 players. It could be 25 players. They need to be proactive. You could take 2 quarterbacks, for instance. It could be 2 running backs. It could be 3 corners, whatever. But they need to be proactive. The next class is arguably the most important in Gus Malzahn's time at UCF. Because of the COVID situation, it's unique. It's usually your first full class, which would be this one. But because of COVID, it's just not as big. So that's going to get pushed back 1 year. Gus is going to be in a situation where he can make his mark with this next recruiting class. Keep that in mind moving forward. I'm going to get into that much later, probably December. We'll start talking about that a little heavier. And then in January, it'll be full force. So that's going to wrap it up for the Daily Night. You can check out news at Inside the Knights. That's the Sports Illustrated opportunity to check out UCF football that I operate. Again, Inside the Knights. Going to have information about Joey Gatewood that I just put up on the site. There's information about Mikey Keene. He's going to be the starting quarterback in a separate article. And we have some UCF football recruiting news, including 2023 prospects. A couple of kids from Osceola High School. John Walker is over there as one of the best D tackles in the country and defensive end. And good friend of his, Derek LeBlanc. They've both been to UCF a few times. So check it out. Anyway, everybody have a great day. I appreciate you coming out. This is going to be a lot of fun following recruiting over the next several months.